I'm Mick Garris, and this is Mortem. And with us now, the most honored creature creator of modern times, six-time Oscar winner, Rick Baker, Monster Maker.
That's me?
That's you.
Wow. Hey. Hi, Mick.
But it was always monsters that you were into, right?
I'm like one of those monster kids, you know? I mean, so many people of my generation grew up in front of a TV, and I was always fascinated by monster movies. And, you know, in like the 60s, all the monster models came out and famous monsters and all those things that so many of us have in common. So yeah, I've been calling myself Rick Baker, Monster Maker, since I was about 10. You know?
It wasn't the blood and guts, and it wasn't the horror of it so much as the fantasy then for you.
Yeah, I mean, I liked monsters, you know. I mean, granted, I mean, it was cool whenever somebody turned to a skeleton or something like that, you know, or there was some kind of, you know, but it wasn't really the gore, because, I mean, there weren't really the gore kind of movies then either, were there? I mean, you didn't see a lot of that stuff back in those days, especially on television, you know, and I saw most of the films that really got me into this, I saw on television.
Did they scare you? Did the horror movies scare you, or did they fill you with joy?
More fill me with joy. I mean, just with fascination. And it's rare that I was ever really frightened of the monsters. And if anything, I really just was attracted to them and liked them, you know. I mean, Frankenstein's monster is a sympathetic character, I think, you know. Besides being cool looking and a great makeup design, you know, I mean, you feel for that guy, you know. And it's not just a masked guy with a knife, you know, killing people as many ways as they can, you know. And you know, I mean, fantasy and science fiction and all that stuff. I just liked unusual looking creatures.
Is that what inspired you to get into this?
The Universal classics definitely were one of the big things. Jack Pierce's work, the Frankenstein's monster is still, you know, one of the greatest makeups ever done, and the Wolfman, you know, all that stuff. But I also liked the crappy 50s movies, you know. And
the Paul Blaisdell monsters.
The Paul Blaisdell monsters, yeah, and all those things. And basically any movie I saw on TV that had a monster in it, you know, even if you had to wait an hour and a half before that, you know, you saw something, you know, it's still, you know. But yeah, I mean, Jack Pierce was definitely one of my first idols. I think he was the first makeup artist who actually knew his name. Then there were people like Dick Smith, who I think, whose work was just far and above anybody else. But John Chambers, you know, Bill Tuttle, all those guys, and Ray Harryhausen and Wells O'Brien and those kind of stop motion and visual effects guys were all like my idols.
Well, you know, a lot of the people who work in the horror genre, filmmakers, makeup effects guys, writers, really come from not the happiest of childhoods. And yet, yours was kind of Leave It to Beaver idyllic.
I lucked out in the parent department, you know. I mean, I was so lucky to have the parents that I had, you know. For one, they actually liked horror movies, you know, which was a good thing. And the worst thing about my parents was that they actually liked sports, too. And I've never been like a sports person. And we didn't have video recorders, we didn't have DVDs, we didn't have that stuff, you know. I had to wait for a movie to come on television, and you just got one shot at it, and then you had to wait, you know.
Did you go through TV Guide and circle the things?
Yeah, I mean, I would study each, you know, and it took forever, you know. And the closest thing we had was the $1 Million Movie. Every day of the week, they'd show the same movie, so I'd write down the time where the cool scenes were that I really wanted to see. And I mean, that's the only trouble I had with my parents, is if, you know, if bowling was on, you know, and we already watched Mighty Joe Young twice, you know, they would watch bowling, and it's like, oh man, you know, and then if it's like a commercial, I kind of check the time, and I go, this is the scene where he's gonna, you know, throw the lion into the thing, and it comes down, and, you know, can I just watch that for a second, you know? But yeah, I really lucked out. I mean, they were always very supportive. It was an odd choice for a 10-year-old to say that he wanted to be the guy who made monsters for a living, and they actually were supportive of that. So.
Were you the weird kid in school?
Now I'm the weird old man and lives down the street. Yeah, I mean,
the Oscar-winning weird old man.
Yeah. But yeah, as a kid in my neighborhood, I was that kind of odd guy. I mean, I was an only child and very shy, and that was something that fascinated me about makeup, was that the first time I made myself up and I saw a different face looking back at me in a mirror, I could do things that I couldn't do, little Ricky Baker couldn't do, you know. The very first thing I did was like just smear some white grease paint on my face and paint some black circles around my eyes. Very simple. But it was enough. Just even that face in the mirror wasn't mine. And I really found that fascinating. And it was like, hey, look, I'm a vampire. You know? So,
and how old were you when you did your first sculpted makeup?
I made my first mask when I was 13, I think.
Now, your mom, Doris, let you use the oven to do your early makeups and foams and things.
Yeah, it's like, Mom, I got a big foam rubber, you know, can I stick it in here? Sure, you know. And And a little bit would ooze out and get on the thing and smell like burnt rubber in the house. And every time we had something that was baked, it always kind of had a rubber taste to it. But I spent most of my childhood, and for that matter, most of my life, locked in, at that time it was my little bedroom makeup laboratory, locked in a room by myself, pushing clay around and doing things and gluing stuff on my face and making silly faces in a mirror,
Well, Dick Smith turned into a mentor of yours.
Yeah.
Tell me how that came about.
Well, I first learned about Dick, I think, in the pages of Famous Monsters. There was, he did a couple of articles on actually how he did things, right, which was so cool because there weren't books and there weren't schools, and this was a guy making really cool things, and he had step-by-step photographs and kind of told you how he did it. So I became a hardcore Dick Smith fan, and there was a project in school where we had to look up somebody in Who's Who in America and do something about him. And I looked up Dick Smith, really not expecting him to be in there, and he was in there. And it had his address.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Binghamton, New York.
Yeah, well, it was in Larchmont, New York. Yeah. So I wrote it down, this special, it was like this holy piece of paper, But I was just, writing a letter to Dick Smith was just, I couldn't do it. He was like God to me, and so I just kept this piece of paper in a little special drawer, and next to my underwear. But he was on the East Coast, and like I said, I was just afraid to write him. But I was born in upstate New York, and never had been there. And when I graduated from high school, my parents were going to go back and wanted me to meet my grandmother, who I'd never met. And to be honest, I was not too excited. It's like, well, I'd rather stay in my room and make masks, And then it just kind of clicked, wait a minute, New York, that's where Dick Smith is. So I thought, okay, now's the time to write Dick Smith, So I wrote him this letter and included some photographs of work that I'd done. A lot of it was copies of his work. And I just kind of said, I'm a big fan, I'm going to be in New York, love to get the chance to meet you. And I got this instant reply. Still to this day, don't know how I got it so soon. Mind you, I went to the mailbox every day, even though, and I opened the mailbox, and one day there was this letter that, had my name on it and had Dick Smith's return address, and it was like spongy. It had something in it, and I was like, oh my God, and it took me the longest time to open it up, and and I pull out this foam rubber appliance of this Quasimodo makeup he did for that Way Out series.
Right.
And it was this great letter. He was just so impressed by what I had done. He goes, you were 18, I just turned 18, I think, 18 years old, and this is better than anything that I've seen from anybody any age, And he goes, I cannot wait to meet you, And so, it was like, oh, that's so cool,
Yeah, and you got to work with him.
On The Exorcist, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of happened because, Dick pretty much, he worked in his basement in Larchmont, his house in Larchmont, a little bitty workshop. And he was pretty much a one-man show, and, for these kind of makeups, appliance makeups, it's you use once and throw away. The rubber pieces that you make, you can only use one time. So the pieces for Linda Blair, if she worked 50 days, he had to have 50 sets. And
right,
you can only probably make one a day if you're lucky, if that turns out. So he had this prep time that he had spent he did a number of designs and tests, which he showed me pictures of early on. And then I think the first day they shot Linda with this approved makeup that everybody signed off on, one of the grips said, oh, she's got her mask on now. And Billy Friedkin overheard this and looked at it and goes, it's too masky, do another one.
Oh.
Mind you, he was right.
Right.
Yeah, in hindsight, I really think he was right, but it was a major problem because he, all this prep time he had then was a waste, and he had to start over again. So Dick called me up in a panic and said, I need to make this stuff all over again, and this is the story I just told you, and would I be willing to come and live in his house and work in his basement and help him? It's like, oh, gee, I don't know, Dick. And I'm like taking, next to my little note and Dick Smith's address and take out my underwear and put them in it, And so I got to work with the master, and it was a great experience, but a terrifying experience too, and my work, just improved so much from that experience.
Well, one of the great things, not just about the horror community, but about the makeup community, is nobody has secrets from each other.
Well, that's because of Dick Smith.
Yeah.
There were a lot of secrets, and Dick, being on the East Coast, when he was interested in makeup, when he tried to find out stuff from guys on the West Coast, they wouldn't tell him anything. And because of that, he came up with his own way of doing things, which I think was actually a better way. Dick, made his mission to, if anybody asked him, he was going to go out of his way to help them, and ridiculously so. And it helped just elevate the state of the art.